Some of these machines are older than most people watching this, and they're still tearing through frozen dirt like it's nothing. The factories that built them are gone. The companies got bought, renamed, buried, but these steel beasts, they refuse to die. Farmers hunt them at auctions, pay more than they cost brand new, and run them 40 years straight without blinking. I found the 10 toughest disc rippers ever built. Number 1 is basically immortal. Number 10. M&W Earthmaster. We start with the one purists will argue about, and that's exactly why it belongs here. The M&W Earthmaster, built by the M&W Gear Company out of Gibson City, Illinois, isn't a textbook disc gang disc ripper. It's a coulter chisel. Rolling coulters slice the residue, heavy shanks fracture the hardpan, and a rear attachment levels the mess. Farmers lumped it in with the disc rippers because it did the same job, and in standing stalks and bean stubble, a lot of them swear it did the job better. The Earthmaster showed up in the minimum till boom of the 1980s in models like the 1460 and the 1700. And here's the refuse to die part. Go on any farm forum today and you'll find guys still running Earthmasters they bought used decades ago. One farmer described buying a 1460 at a sale, running it more than 800 acres a year for over a decade, and having almost no breakdowns for around $3,000. That's the whole legend in one sentence. M&W Gear itself changed hands and faded from the scene, but the Earthmaster kept eating compaction long after the nameplate stopped mattering. It's number 10 because it's the underdog, the tool that outlived the company that built it, and still turns up field ready at auctions for a fraction of what a new ripper costs. And notice the pattern already forming, because it repeats for every machine on this list. The Earthmaster's strength was that it kept residue standing and still ripped the compaction underneath, which is exactly what conservation compliance demanded. It didn't need computers or fancy hydraulics. It needed coulters that cut, shanks that held, and a frame that didn't quit. When a machine is that simple, that overbuilt, and that cheap to fix, it doesn't retire. It just gets handed to the next generation. Number 9. Landoll Weatherproofer /2210. Number 9 comes out of Marysville, Kansas, the Landoll Corporation, a company that made its name building tough steel and never really stopped. The Weatherproofer became Landoll's signature deep tillage tool, and over the years it evolved into a full disc ripper configuration, front cutting discs, a bank of coil or spring reset shanks, and rear leveling discs, sold in setups like the 2210 and the Weatherproofer 2 disc ripper on 30-inch shank spacing. What made the Weatherproofer stick around is right there in the name. It was built to work when the weather wouldn't cooperate. Coil reset shanks let the machine trip over rocks and roots instead of snapping, and the heavy frame let farmers pull it deep behind the big articulated tractors that were showing up in the late 80s and 90s. Landoll had spent decades building industrial-grade steel, trailers, transport equipment, hard-use machinery, and that industrial mindset shows up in the tillage line. This wasn't a company that built to a price point and hoped. It built to survive abuse, because that's what the rest of its business demanded. Landoll built these things like they were welding a bridge, and the market noticed. Even today, when farmers list the disc rippers still worth buying used, the Landoll name comes up right alongside the giants. It's not flashy. The paint fades to a chalky yellow after enough seasons in the sun, but the bones underneath outlast 3 tractors. Landoll is still an independent, family-connected manufacturer. One of the reasons parts never dried up, and one of the reasons a 25-year-old Weatherproofer is still a machine you can actually keep running. That's the difference between a tool that dies and a tool that just keeps showing up. Somebody's still making the shins, the points, and the bearings. Landoll made sure of it. Number 8. Krause Land Builder /Dominator. From one Kansas legend to another, Krause, out of Hutchinson, Kansas, spent decades as one of the most respected tillage names in the country, and its disc chisel and disc ripper lineage is a big reason why. The Land Builder, a true disc ripper disc built in configurations like the 4085, put a Rockflex disc gang up front, auto reset shanks in the middle, and an adjustable leveling gang behind. That Rockflex auto reset combination is the tell. Krause designed these to survive ground that would wreck a lighter machine. Krause's reputation for durability was so strong that when the German giant Kuhn wanted into the North American tillage market, it didn't build from scratch. It bought Krause's in 2011 and kept building rippers in that same Hutchinson plant. The disc ripper line lived on as the Dominator in models like the 4850. But the machines that earned the trust were the earlier ones, The Krause's tools farmers bought in the 80s and 90s that are still cutting stalks today. Ask around and you'll hear the same story over and over. Somebody's dad bought a Krause's, and 30 years later it's still the machine they reach for when the ground is hard and the residue is thick. The frames don't crack, the gangs don't wander. And because Kuhn kept the line alive, the parts pipeline never closed. A company disappearing usually kills its machines within a decade. Krause is the opposite case. It got absorbed, but the steel it built beforehand became a benchmark that a much bigger company chose to keep chasing. Number 8. And it earned every inch of it. Number 7. Sunflower 4630. Yes, a third Kansas machine, because in the disc ripper world, Kansas was Detroit. Sunflower Manufacturing, based in Beloit, Kansas, was famous for disc harrows and tillage tools, and it brought that same overbuilt philosophy to the disc ripper. We can pin the date precisely. A Sunflower disc ripper appears in a company brochure from February 1989, right in the thick of the conservation tillage rush. The machines that followed, in the 4600 series like the 4610 and the big 4630, became known for one thing above all: mass. Farmers who ran them used the same words, very big and heavy frame. One described watching a 9-shank Sunflower 4610 pulled 8 to 9 miles an hour behind a 550 horsepower Versatile, shanks working 16 inches deep and the 28-inch discs slicing 8 inches down, and walking away ready to buy one. That's the Sunflower character in a nutshell. It needed a lot of horsepower, but it would till as fast as you dared to pull it, and it did not flinch. The heavy frame that made it a beast to move is the exact reason so many are still working. There's simply less to fatigue, less to bend, less to fail. And Sunflower came at this from an interesting angle. It was a disc harrow company first. Decades of building disc gangs meant Sunflower understood the one component that kills lesser disc rippers: the gang, the bearings, the way the discs are hung and angled. When a company that already mastered discs decides to build a ripper, you get a machine whose front end is genuinely bulletproof, and the 4600 series proved it in the toughest ground in Kansas and Nebraska. Sunflower's tillage line eventually passed through the AGCO family, but the vintage 4600 series rippers kept their following because they were engineered with a huge margin of safety baked in. When a farmer tells you a machine won't wear out in your lifetime, he's usually exaggerating. With a well-kept Sunflower 4630, he might not be. That's why it lands at number 7, one of the heaviest, most stubborn disc rippers of the whole era. Number 6. Brillion Land Commander. Now we go to Wisconsin, and to a company whose roots go back to the early 1900s, Brillion Iron Works of Brillion, Wisconsin. Brillion made its name on pulverizers and seedbed tools, but the Land Commander is the machine that put it on this list. And its origin story is the cleanest proof of everything I said at the top. Brillion itself described the Land Commander, a disc ripper disc, as designed specifically to help farmers meet the goals of the Conservation Compliance Program and to handle the new high horsepower tractors. This machine was purpose-built for the exact law that created the category. The Land Commander gave the farmer total control of primary tillage in one pass: cut, rip, and level, while leaving enough residue on top to satisfy the compliance rules. Farmers loved the tight shank spacing, some running 9 shanks on 15-inch centers, which left a level, worked finish that competitors couldn't always match. It worked so well the line kept evolving: the Land Commander 2, then the Land Commander 3, each one heavier and wider than the last. And when Brillion's agricultural line was eventually taken over by Landoll, the Land Commander didn't die. It kept getting built under new ownership. Think about that. A design from the 1980s conservation era was good enough that 2 different companies chose to keep manufacturing it into the modern day. That's not nostalgia. That's engineering that refused to become obsolete. A Brillion Land Commander from the 90s isn't a museum piece. It's a machine a working farmer will still fight you for at an auction. Number 5. John Deere 512. You knew green was coming. John Deere didn't invent the disc ripper, but when it committed to the category, it built one of the most beloved machines in the whole class, the 512, successor to the 510, and the tool that anchored Deere's disc ripper reputation through the 1990s. Front cushion gang discs, 7 to 11 double spring reset shanks, single point depth control, and rear leveling discs, all in working widths up to around 22.5 feet. Here's why farmers still chase the 512 specifically, and it's a genuinely clever piece of engineering. Bearings. On earlier and competing rippers, the disc gang bearings were the weak point. They'd fail yearly and cost you a fortune in downtime. Deere's 512 on the 7-shank models ran with as few as 10 to 12 bearings, each with a single grease zerk. Fewer bearings, simpler service, less to break. Farmers who've owned them for decades will tell you that's the reason the 512 outlasted machines that cost about the same new. Simplicity is durability. The 512 also rode on walking tandems and used wear shins on the shanks, so the parts that did take a beating were cheap, bolt-on, and still available today through Deere and every aftermarket supplier in the Midwest. That last point can't be overstated. A machine only refuses to die if you can still feed it points, shins, and bearings 30 years later. And no company on earth keeps a parts pipeline open like John Deere. Buy a clean 512 today and you can have it field ready by the weekend. There's a reason the 512's bearing setup gets brought up in almost every serious disc ripper conversation. Bearing life is roughly even across all the major brands, so the machine that uses fewer bearings and makes them easier to grease simply spends more of its life in the field and less of it in the shop. Deere understood that math. The 512 also fit neatly into a parts family shared with the 510, the 900 and 900V, the 2100 and the later 2700 series, so a huge catalog of points, shins, protectors and blades cross-references straight to it. That combination, smart design, brutal simplicity, endless parts, is why the 512 sits at number 5 and why it's often the first vintage disc ripper a young farmer buys. Number 4. Case IH 870 Ecolo-Tiger. Number 4 is where the story gets interesting, because this red machine has blue blood. When Case IH wanted the best disc ripper on the market in the 1990s, it didn't design one, it bought the company that already had it. Around 1993, Case IH acquired DMI, the Illinois firm behind the legendary Ecolo-Tiger, and folded that proven design into its own lineup. The result was the Case IH 870 Ecolo-Tiger. Front disc gangs, spring reset or shear bolt shanks in configurations from 7 up to 13, and rear leveling discs in widths from 14 all the way to 26 feet. So the 870 is really a DMI Ecolo-Tiger wearing Case IH paint, and that's the highest compliment you can pay it. It inherited the exact toughness that made the original famous, then got the backing of a global company's parts and dealer network. That's a lethal combination for longevity. The 870 line just kept going, eventually leading to the 875, which Case IH itself calls the 8th generation of a tradition that began in 1978. When a manufacturer publicly traces an unbroken line back 4 decades, that's not marketing fluff. It's a machine that never had a reason to be replaced, only refined. And that acquisition mattered for durability in a way that isn't obvious at first. When DMI was a small independent, its brilliant designs were only as available as its small parts network. The moment Case IH absorbed the Ecolo-Tiger, that same tough machine suddenly had a nationwide dealer body and a corporate parts catalog standing behind it. A great design plus infinite parts support is the recipe for a machine that literally cannot be killed by neglect. There's always a shin, a point, or a bearing on a shelf within driving distance. Farmers who run 870s today talk about them the way they talk about a good pickup. You don't sell it, you just keep fixing the little stuff. Points, shins, bearings, a hydraulic hose here and there, and it goes back to work. The 870 earns number 4 because it's the machine that proved a great design can survive being bought, rebadged, and absorbed into a corporate giant, and come out the other side stronger. Which brings us to the machine it came from. Number 3. DMI Tiger Two. Time to meet DMI properly, because the top 3 all trace back to one small Illinois company that punched so far above its weight it's almost unbelievable. DMI Inc. was started in 1961 by a farmer named Bill Dietrich in Goodfield, Illinois, first building hog crates, waterers, and fertilizer equipment. From those humble beginnings came a tillage dynasty, and the Tiger Two, built through roughly 1985 to 1991, is where DMI's disc ripper reputation turned into legend. The Tiger Two was a deep ripper for minimum tillage, front disc blades, heavy shear bolt shanks, rear leveling discs, and DMI marketed it with the kind of confidence you only earn when the product delivers, promising it would eliminate compaction and boost yields even behind a 2-wheel drive tractor. Farmers found out DMI wasn't bluffing. These machines were built with a thickness of steel that bordered on overkill, and that overkill is precisely why they're still in the field 30+ years later. Walk an auction yard and you'll still see Tiger Twos with straight, uncracked frames and no welds, the mark of a machine that was engineered to be abused and never gave in. The shear bolt shanks were genius for durability. Hit an immovable rock and the bolt shears, protecting the shank and the frame. Replace a cheap bolt and you're back to work in minutes. Simple, cheap, indestructible, and it's worth sitting with how improbable DMI's whole rise was. This was a company that started in 1961 making hog crates and waterers, livestock equipment, in a small Illinois town. By the mid-80s it was building the deep tillage tool the entire Corn Belt wanted, out-engineering companies 10 times its size. That happened because DMI's people understood one thing better than anybody. Farmers don't want clever, they want unbreakable. Every design decision on the Tiger Two bent toward survival. DMI's own slogans bragged about quality made affordable and equipment designed and manufactured with ingenuity, and for once the ad copy aged perfectly. The Tiger Two is number 3 because it's the machine that proved DMI could build a ripper tough enough to outlive its own decade, and it set the stage for the 2 Ecolo-Tigers that made the little Goodfield company immortal. Number 2. DMI Ecolo-Tiger 527. If the Tiger Two was DMI's tank, the Ecolo-Tiger 527 was its everyman, and that's exactly why it's number 2. 5 shanks on 27-inch spacing, spring reset, a twin carrying bar, discs up front and leveling discs behind, a size perfectly matched to the tractors most family farms actually owned. Not everyone was running 500 horsepower. The 527 let a farmer with a mid-sized tractor get true one-pass conservation tillage, rip the compaction, size the residue, leave a level finish, without needing to be a mega operation. That accessibility is why so many were sold, and why so many survive. The Ecolo-Tiger family launched in 1978, right as the conservation wave was building, and the 527 became one of the most common disc rippers in the entire Corn Belt. Spring reset shanks meant it could trip over rocks and snap back into place automatically, no bolts to replace, no downtime, which made it forgiving in ground that ate other machines alive. And because DMI built so many, and because Case IH later kept the parts flowing after the acquisition, farmers buy them, run them hard, and pass them on. The 527 is number 2 not because it's the biggest or the heaviest, it's neither, but because it's the disc ripper that put bulletproof DMI engineering within reach of the average farmer and then simply refused to wear out, which leaves exactly one machine at the top. Number 1. DMI Ecolo-Tiger 730/730B. And here it is, the machine from the hook, the one that's basically immortal, the DMI Ecolo-Tiger 730, and its refined big brother the 730B. This is the disc ripper that defined the category. The lineage the whole Ecolo-Tiger name is built on started in 1978, and the 730 is its fullest expression. Front disc gangs, 7 ripper shanks on 30-inch spacing, spring reset or shear bolt options, rear disc levelers, and on the 730B, wing fold outer disc so you could get real width and still fit down a road. One machine, one pass, cut the trash, shatter the hardpan, level the field. Why is it number 1? Because it does everything the others do well, and it does it with the DMI toughness that turned a tiny Goodfield company into the standard the entire industry measured itself against. The 730B is the machine other manufacturers were quietly copying. Its frame geometry, its shank protection, its disc arrangement, that's the template. And the proof of its greatness is written in the market. Nearly 50 years after the Ecolo-Tiger name was born, the design didn't get discontinued, it got inherited. Case IH bought it, evolved it into the 870 and then the 875, the 8th generation, and is still building disc rippers on that DNA today. Very few farm implements can claim an unbroken bloodline from the Carter administration to now. The Ecolo-Tiger can. But forget the corporate history. Here's the real reason it's number 1. Go to a farm auction this fall. When a clean DMI Ecolo-Tiger 730B rolls across the block, watch the crowd, watch the bidding. These machines routinely sell for strong money decades after they were built, because the men bidding know something the spec sheet doesn't say. This thing will outwork, outlast, and outlive almost anything you can buy new. The company that stamped its name on it has been folded into a global corporation. The little factory in Goodfield is a memory. Bill Dietrich's hog crate startup is a footnote. But the Ecolo-Tiger 730B? It's still out there right now, in the dark, headlights on, tearing through frozen ground like the last 40 years never happened. That's not a machine that refused to die. That's a machine that forgot how. If you've owned any of these, drop the model and the hours in the comments. I read every one. And if this list surprised you, hit subscribe. The next one is even wilder. See you in the field.